We're going. Episode 31. Did you ever think we'd make it this far?
Yes? Am I supposed to say yes?
I don't know.
I've only been here for like one other episode.
That's
so
true.
Maybe that's a question for you.
Yeah. Oh, for the beard. Did you think we'd make it this far? 31 episodes. We're in right now. I want to give a special shout out and welcome to all of our new viewers and listeners because it was talked about in church this weekend. So maybe you tuned in because of that. Welcome to the Heights Unedited podcast, a podcast featuring real conversations about real life where we dig deeper into the weekend message as well as answering your questions on faith, culture, and life. My name is Todd, aka the Bald Eagle, and I'm here with our resident theologian, Pastor Noah.
We're back with the theologian term. It's big.
Well, are you not?
I mean, in the sense that everybody's a theologian. Anybody who talks about theology is a theologian, right? So,
there we go.
Yeah.
But not everybody's a professor at a university.
Yeah, I'm not a professor at a university. I get to teach adjunct.
What's the difference?
Adjunct means you're like part-time.
Oh, okay. He only teaches part-time at a university, folks. I take everything I said about theologian back.
There it is. Good. Set the record
straight. Can you get me a new guest? Because this isn't going to work. No, we are super, super grateful that you are with us today. We're super grateful that we get to dive into some really deep questions that maybe people have pondered and maybe people have no idea that even exist. So we'll get to those in a second, but I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners that are with us today. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think about the show via a rate and review. 5 stars, nothing less than that. We'd love for you to do that. We will read it on the show. But again, we are so grateful that you are here. I also want to tell you up front right now, in case you don't make it longer in the podcast, our question reservoir is running low. So send in your questions. This show is only as good as the questions you ask. So please, if you have something that's just been sitting there, or you're thinking about it, or that just comes up in your daily life, send us a question about that. We would love to talk about it and answer that on the show.
Yeah.
But Noah, not only are you a part-time professor, but you also are our Prescott Valley youth pastor. Let us in on what is happening in PV youth. Like, what are some celebrations? What can we as a church celebrate with you on what's happening in PV youth?
Man, I am just so stoked and to celebrate the fact that we've made it a full school year, right? Like there has been a lot that's happened in the school year, but just to have the students that continue to keep coming back, like we've just been able to figure out our core students and the momentum we're building with them, I think is just so much fun. I think we're going into next year, looking forward to the year with a lot of excitement. So celebrate that. We made it. Another big celebration is we're trying to figure out how to incorporate you, the church family, into what we're doing with PV Youth. And part of the way we're trying to do that is through meals. We get to feed our students every Thursday. And so we're going to be pushing out something pretty soon. And just tell
us for a second, why is that so important? I mean, I know food is a great thing for any of us to gather around. And, we see it throughout scripture. I love food. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Specifically with PV Youth, like let us in on why is that so important?
Yeah. I mean, some of our students are just coming from places where they just don't get to eat for the day, right? Like they're coming in, they might have free lunch at school, but that's really the only thing they're getting for the day. And so one of the things they come on a Thursday night is they're students anyways, but they're always hungry. Right. And so one of the ways we try to meet that very tangible need is just by feeding them. And so in the past, like I've bought pizza but one of the cool things is like there's been a couple life groups in our church that have stepped up and like, we want to provide meals for these kids, home cooked meals.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's the coolest thing to see students walk in on a Thursday night and realize they're getting a home cooked meal.
Yeah.
Like pizza's great. Love pizza. But to get like spaghetti with meat sauce and a gluten-free option, like that's huge. Like one of our life groups did that. And and they come and serve it. So super cool opportunity for our church family. And I think it just brings PV Youth just into the fold, right? Like we are an extension of what Heights is doing in Prescott Valley. And so just puts the family all together. It's great.
I mean, food breaks down walls no matter what.
Oh my goodness,
Like in a meal. But man, when you eat, there's a difference between saying like, hey, come to PV Youth, we love you.
Yeah.
And then them feeling the love, seeing it.
That's right.
Like, I mean, there's just that's the church in general is we will say love, but showing it is always so much better and so much stronger.
Yeah.
And the communication of what that means when they see a home cooked meal that maybe they haven't had in a while,
right,
that is provided by the church that says that they love them, and now they actually physically, tangibly see it.
Yeah.
Like, man, the impact on that, it just opens doors and opens hearts to the message of Jesus.
It's so good. There are people in Prescott Valley and in Prescott and all the Tri-City areas who care about these students enough to come and sacrifice their Thursday night and bring that meal. Like that's just that for the students is incredible, because I think they're like, there's an adult who cares for me, who wants the best for me. Like some of them don't have that. And so that's really what Thursday nights are. So
yeah. And I would also say, obviously helping in youth, whether it's Prescott or PV, either one, like we need leaders there.
Yep.
But another one too is just bringing awareness. You might even know this ministry exists, right?
That's
so
right.
for people that are listening right now, adding PV youth and all of the youth, but adding PV youth to your prayer list,
huge.
Like, man,
yeah,
this is something that God is moving. God is shaking. There's amazing things happening in there. Stories of students giving their life to Jesus who, for all intents and purposes, said, I will not give my life to Jesus.
That's
and
right.
then 6 months later, after continually being loved by the group, has given their life to Jesus.
I mean, we just celebrated 3 of our students. This is the first time it's happened. We had 3 of our students get baptized the last time. And like, that is such a sweet, sweet moment to know those students going in and being like, man, do you even know who Jesus is? And then to come around full circle now to the spring and be like, they just got baptized. Like we've never had that before. So that was really exciting and definitely one of the highlights.
Super cool. And just exciting what's going on there. So grateful for you to be there and to just love these kids, and for all the leaders that are there that are also showing up week in and week out. So grateful for them too.
They're
and
so clutch.
Yeah, that's amazing. So awesome. Well, glad that we get to walk this journey together. And you ready for some questions?
Dude, let's hit it.
Here's what I would say before we head into these questions for all of our viewers and listeners is the deeper theological questions that you get, the less applicable most of the time they are. And what I mean is that the answer to especially this first question is not going to have a bearing on anyone's faith, either direction for the most part. And the gospel is not confusing. It's very simple. And it's very simple. If we don't receive it like a child, then we're not even understanding it in its true form. And so that is where this is. So I would just go into all these questions for anyone watching or listening, just knowing like, man, this is stuff we can talk about. But at the end of the day, like our faith is built on Jesus and his sacrifice that he made for us on the cross and his resurrection so that we can walk a new life. So,
well, and that's what's fun, right? We get to have these conversations. And I think for everybody out there, like my goal is there are some things that I will tell you what you need to think about this, right? Like Jesus has died, Jesus has risen. Like those are things that we all need to be in agreement on. But for some of these questions, like my goal, especially with like our college students, like I want to teach you how to think through these questions. Like I don't really want to give you the right answer and just leave it at that, right? Like I want you to think through deeply how this matters, how it pertains to the faith, but I'm not going to come down hard either way, unless it is a matter of something that we need to hold tightly, like that resurrection. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's hop into the first question here. This may be one that people don't even know exists. So let's give some background here as well. Charlotte asks this. She says, who exactly were the Nephilim and what happened to them? Yeah.
Great question. So for those of you that are like, what did Todd just say? Did you just sneeze or something? Charlotte is asking about the Nephilim. And so we get this word out of Genesis 6. It comes pretty quickly after, you have the fall in Genesis 3. You have Cain and Abel in Genesis 4, the first murder. And then as you're reading the story, it devolves pretty quickly. Like at the end of Genesis 4, we get this guy named Lamech. And Lamech is bragging to his multiple wives about how many men he has killed for just thinking wrongly about him, right? So humanity was this amazing creation, perfect, put into the garden in this way, and we have fallen from grace quickly, right? And so we get to Genesis 5, and Genesis 5 is this long list of names. It's a oh my goodness, why am I blanking on the name? Where it's a bunch of names. It's just a history, essentially. This person,
a genealogy.
Yeah, a genealogy. Yeah. There it is. And the crazy thing about all those genealogies is that they all end the same. And he died, right? So death is in the world. Death is making an impact. And so then we get to Genesis 6. And so we have this little story about these sons of God, and they're getting together with women, essentially. And so the Nephilim, this word is transliterated from Hebrew. Okay, so that's how it's in the text. And the reason we transliterate it, because we don't really know who they are. We don't know what they are. It's kind of confusing. So what we'll do is we'll go back to verse 2 in that passage of who are the sons of God. So there's kind of three major options around there. And so the first one is that they are angels who have taken physical form, or they have indwelled men of some sign, and they are getting together with women and they beget the Nephilim, right? So this idea is really supported in First Enoch. So First Enoch is it's an apocryphal work. It's a Jewish literature work, but there's these stories where they actually they're commenting on Genesis, and they actually name the angels who are down doing these things, right? And so this gets into a big kind of mythology, right? Like this is filling out the spiritual world. It's filling out, right? Because God creates all things, and he also creates angels. He creates these spiritual beings. And so the question is, what are they doing? And so some have interpreted this passage as saying, well, the angels are also getting involved. They are partaking in evil. They have fallen in some way. And so that's one option, right? This is one option. Another option is that these sons of God are actually positive. They are not negative, but they're positive. They're actually men from Seth's line. Okay, so if we go all the way back to Genesis, or if we go to Cain and Abel and that story, and they have all of these children, right? Seth is one of these, the good line, essentially. But what happens is that Seth's line becomes corrupted because he gets with, and then this is where we're interpreting the women here as from Cain, essentially. Mm-hmm. So Cain has been cursed by God. He has been cursed to wander the earth, and his descendants are cursed. And so these men of renown, these men of God, are now getting with Cain. It's a metaphorical kind of way of saying they're being corrupted, right? Third option is, that these are powerful tyrants, essentially. These are men who, and then this is the angel thing again. Sometimes they'll say that they have been indwelled by these evil spirit, evil angel of some kind, but they are out there just exerting their dominance, exerting tyranny, and they are participating in evil, and they are furthering evil. And so that's kind of the three options with who are the sons of God and what are they doing? Now, as I'm talking to you, and I did a little background on this because you sent me this question specifically last week. Can I be honest with you? I was sitting there and I was like, man, what does this do for the life of our church? Like how can this story tell us about who God is, tell us about who Jesus is? Like where does the rubber meet the road here, right? Because we can debate all day long about who are these people? Mm-hmm. And it's good that we debate. There is literature upon literature about this, okay? What I love, I think, is that if we reframe the question, reframe how we read that passage. So in that passage, we focus very much on who the Nephilim is, right? Rightfully so. It's a good question. But what is so interesting is that if we reframe it and look at what God is doing during this time, God is acknowledging the fact that he has made a mistake creating humanity, right? Like there is so much evil in the world that his heart is grieved, right? Like that's a pretty significant thing. The God of all creation who knows all things and experiences them in a moment, right? But he's looking at what has happened, and the Bible says his heart is grieved by it. Right. And I think that if we were to take that and look at what's going on, right? Whoever you decide is the subject, I think it's a great opportunity to look at it and be like, oh my goodness, this God sees the people who are downtrodden, sees the evil going on, acknowledges it, and is moving towards solving it, right? Like he's addressing it in the moment. And that's what I think is really cool about this passage, because regardless of who the Nephilim is, like we get to see a God who is intent on preserving his creation, right? You have it pulled up. I see it. Yeah. It's such a beautiful moment. And so that's what I think is so helpful about this passage, because if we're serious, and I think we are, about the Bible speaking to us in this present day, that God is using the Bible, and not only that, the Bible points to Jesus and who Jesus is. What a fascinating just compare and contrast, right? God is saying, my spirit will not contend with humanity forever. Their days are numbered, essentially. Right. And then at the end of Matthew, you have Jesus who has died, he has risen, and now he is giving the Great Commission. And at the end of the Great Commission, he says, and surely I am with you to the end of the age. What a role reversal, right? Humanity is not left on its own. God desires to dwell with his people, and he makes that possible through Jesus. And so that, I think that really is where the rubber meets the road for our church. Like, there's a God who could have started over, could have given up, destroyed all things and left it, but instead he bears with us. He wants to be with us, and that is his compassion, right? But at the same time, there's that judgment, right? Evil has an expiration date. This will not continue the way it is. And so that's really where I landed after doing some of this literature reading. Yeah.
Yeah. I landed on the like, hey man, this is what this actually means for us. There's not necessarily an application for a study of something that is no longer. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, what do you do with that? You know, I think some understanding around it is even what you said, there's multiple theories, multiple options of what it is. I think so understanding first and foremost, like we don't fully know what they are.
Exactly.
You know, and then even understanding the nuances within that, you know, the word angel means messenger. Yeah. So a lot of times we think, you know, that's the angel. Well, we have to understand that that's not necessarily who that would be referring to. It would be referring to fallen angels, right? So when it talks about angels, like in that way, it would be in the same way that they're enemies of God.
Yep.
And so to do those things, when we say sons of God, if it's that option, it's not necessarily, it's not sent by God.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something to kind of note there as well. And just understand that. What I would just, you know, ask then too, in the follow-up part of this question that she wrote is like, what happened to them?
Yeah. I mean, they're gone, right?
They're gone now.
Yeah.
However, you know, if we can just say giants, we see the spies that go into the promised land and come back and go, we can't go in there. There's giants everywhere.
Right.
That could be them, which I'm almost asking. And then another option would be, you know, when David and Goliath, Goliath and his brothers were all giants as well. Would those be Nephilim as well? Or like, you know, in your
that's a great question, right? Because we want to, at one hand, affirm that the Bible is true in all it says, right? And it is true about historic things as well, right? So if the Bible is claiming that there were giants in the land, right? And that's what's being claimed, then of course we affirm that, right? What I think, because I wasn't there, right? You weren't there. Right. Nobody was there at this point other than God.
Well, and just the giants in general is a hard one for us to understand, because I've met some people that are very tall.
Dude,
I would think they're giants.
I'm thinking of Big Bill right now.
Exactly.
In our church. Who, like I gave him a hug the other day and I don't think I came up to his chest. And I'm average height. Like, I know I look short right now.
Because I'm so tall.
Yeah,
that's why.
Exactly. But yeah, and so at the very least, what we can say, especially about what you're referring to in Judges, right? At the very least, there is a tradition within the Jewish community at that point of assigning the giants like that. Those are bad dudes. Like they are not of God. They are not. So there are people who have been reading the Genesis passage in the community and being like, this is bad news. Like, these guys are giants. We are toast. Like, I don't know what we're going to do, because, man, there's a divine power associated with them. And I'm scared. Yeah. Right. Which is what a fascinating take, right? Like, it really puts into perspective those spies who went in to Israel or to the promised land, right? Like, they walk in and they immediately confronted with a potential divine power, right? Run away scared. Right.
Wow. That and I feel like this is where there is application for us. Man, anytime we see things that are giants in our life, a lot of times we run away, not realizing the divine power we have is all powerful.
Yep.
There is no other divine power that holds the type of power that our God has.
That's right.
He is all powerful, right? When you look at the attributes of God and who God is, then you start getting into the theological words where, you know, he's everywhere at once.
Yep.
He is all powerful. He is all knowing, right? The omnis, which is, you know, I don't want to make it like, you know, bigger words than we need to understand, but the omnipotence of God means that he is all powerful.
Yep.
And
that's right.
We sometimes look at anything that has any power and immediately run from it instead of realizing we have all power.
That's right. Well, and that's what, and you bring up for me reading Catherine Sonderegger, who's incredible. She's a systematic theologian out of Virginia Tech Seminary. If I'm wrong about that, forgive me. That's off the top of my head. But what I love about what she says about omnipotence is that it can become clothed in this baby born in a manger in some backwater country, right? Like that is all powerful.
Right.
And it doesn't look like all power, right? Like at that time, the Jewish conception was all power means a divine conqueror with a sword on a horse coming in, marching in, and beating back the Romans. And instead, all powerful in that moment was a baby. Like that, what a all powerful doesn't necessarily look like, because I'm gonna be honest, if I'm standing and there's an army of big bills, you know, standing up against me, dude, that's a little worrying. Yeah. Like that's a visible show of power, visible show of force. In reality, I think our God, the God who is all powerful, clothes himself in something that doesn't look powerful.
Well, I mean, that goes straight to David and Goliath, man.
Exactly.
It is, why did Saul, chosen for his stature?
Yep.
Why did Saul, who commanded armies?
Yep.
All of them were so afraid of Goliath.
So afraid.
David, a shepherd boy, who was not chosen for his stature.
Yep.
David, a shepherd boy who was a boy.
Yep.
He goes in and conquers this giant.
Yep.
Because he knew it was not him, but it was God, and God saying, hey, here's, you can stand up to the giants in your life because of me.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I know that we could probably go the whole episode with questions about them and who they are and what they are and all of that. But hopefully, Charlotte, that gives you maybe just a little bit of framework for what that is, without saying conclusively we don't know what that is. But great question. Thank you so much for writing that in.
Yeah.
I would like to jump into the weekend a little bit and just kind of just talk a little bit about the parable that we spoke on this weekend. We are in a collection right now where we're going through parables of Jesus. We have one more week next week. But this week we talked about the parable of the 10 virgins, and it was reframed as the parable of the 10 bridesmaids, which kind of, I think, breaks down the maybe intimidation factor of this one.
The awkwardness, right?
Yeah.
Like you and I don't throw around the word virgin ever.
Yeah.
Like, so doesn't make our...
When I was reading, I'm like, why did Jesus not use a different word? However, the context was totally normal for them to be using that, but for us, and that's not to get it derailed with what this was about.
Yeah.
And so this parable being prepared is so important. And I think narrowing down on that idea that we don't know when Jesus is coming back, and not just referring to his second coming.
Right.
We don't know when he's coming back for us. And I mean that in a way of, we don't know when our time is up.
Right.
We say it all the time, like, man, they were gone before their time. Well, we think it's before their time, but it was obviously the time that God wanted them to come home. It was the time where God was saying, no, you're done on earth. I don't have anything else for you. Therefore, you're coming home.
Right.
And from our perspective, we think, man, that's way too early for them.
Right.
But I think that the reality of this needs to set in where we realize, man, we don't have time, because how often do I waste time? And it's just, it's so much, you know?
Yeah. Well, and Todd, one of the things I loved about what you spoke about this weekend was that sense of urgency that comes with it, right? Because when the bridesmaids wake up and they realize the master's coming, right? Then the foolish ones are like, oh, I got to get some oil. I got to get whatever it is to light my lamp so I can be a part of this party. That's that urgency. That urgency belongs before, right? There's a time of preparation, right? So that's what he's talking about. It feels like in this life, that's the time where we need to be figuring out what oil is, right? And we need to be figuring out, man, what can I do in this moment? What can I do with the gift of life that I've been given? And that's, I thought you did a really good job with that, because it communicates an urgency that, man, here in America, at least, we're so quick to be like, okay, I'm going to bed tonight and the world's going to be fine tomorrow. I'm going to wake up and it's going to be all good. Like, I got food in my pantry, food in my fridge. Like, I got it figured out for at least the rest of the week. Like, and that can lead us into this complacency, right? Like, and that's good. It's good things to have that security, but security can also quickly lead to complacency, right?
Yeah, man, that reminds me, we're getting ready to take a trip to the Dominican Republic with a group of students. And so as we get ready for the trip, we have these meetings where we go over things. And so we were watching this video to prepare people, and it was talking about how we have a tendency sometimes to go into other countries thinking, well, we have what you need because you are poor. And we think poor just in physical things. Man, we have food, we have clothes, we have these things. And so we're going to another country that maybe doesn't have these things, or areas that don't have these things. And so we have the wrong mentality to go in and realizing that we are poor in spirit. And what they have is things that are actually better than what we have. And just because they don't have maybe the physical stuff that we have, spiritually, it's like they've figured it out more than we haven't. And I think sometimes what you were just saying is the comfort of our American life lends to us not wanting to actually prepare spiritually. It doesn't matter what you have physically. When Jesus comes back, that's not the preparation he's talking about. He's talking about the preparation of something that lasts beyond this lifetime. And so, I think you nailed it right there is sometimes we allow comfort to steal what really matters.
No, 100%. I'm curious. Can I ask you a question on this podcast? Is that allowed? Can we reverse the roles?
We can do it for a sec.
Man, you talked about the oil, and you talked about, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you went with, it's a relationship, right? It's that relationship that makes the difference. Is that what the oil is, right? Because for those that maybe didn't see the sermon yet, everything is the same with the bridesmaids and between the wise and the foolish ones, other than the fact that they didn't have oil. So the oil, is that the relationship piece?
Here's what I've seen with it is that everything on the outside looked the same. So the bridesmaids that had their lamp, they were invited to the party, they were there, they had all that. The thing on the inside is what mattered. And the inside was what allowed the flame to show up so that they could be on the outside. And the same thing, you can have your torch, you can be there, but if you don't have what's on the inside, the flame's not going to show up. And that's why it's, for me, the idea of starting with a relationship with Jesus is so important, because the next part of it is how you live matters. Well, you can't live, if you're trying to live in a way that shows Jesus, but you don't actually have Jesus on the inside, you're walking around with a torch that's not lit. And the flame's not there. And it's not lighting the way. There's other places in scripture where it talks about, like, this is the light. And when you bring a light into darkness, it dispels darkness. That's what it does. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. So when we have our trust in Jesus, we then also become light of the world where we put ourselves and where we are. Well, if you don't have what's on the inside, the flame is not going to show up, because the oil is necessary for the flame. And so, that's where, for me, I would say it starts with that relationship with Jesus. And then how you live with that is what's important in the preparation process. So being prepared is not just get out of hell free card of, yes, I've accepted Jesus, boom, now I'm good. It goes a little bit further than that. It's like, man, how are you living? Because you what you do matters. And that's what, I love that verse in Titus, and when it talks about, like, hey, yes, you've been saved, you've experienced the grace of God, but it is for a purpose. It is for you to then say no to your worldly passions and desires and live for Jesus. And sometimes we miss that. We twist it. It's like, well, yes, I've been saved so that I can do what I want.
Exactly.
No. It's actually so you can say no to what you want.
Right. It's not just a freedom from, but a freedom for. Right. Like that's so huge. And just to echo, I did a little background reading, because I don't know if you know this, but every week before whoever is speaking on that weekend goes up, there's this thing we do called teaching team. Right. And it's on Tuesday. And it's incredible because the entire staff is invited and we get to sit and read scripture together. And that's what I think is really cool about that. But when I was, sitting in teaching team and you were going through your message, I did I was digging around in some of the church fathers, and what I love, and I think it echoes your point, Augustine preaches on this passage, and he's like, that oil is that joy that Christ gives you, right? Like the joy that characterizes your life, right? Because you're right. If you don't have that joy, you're going to show up to serve, and it's not going to go well, right? You're going to get burnt out. You're going to just fall flat, because it's we get to give back. We get to be free for some things. And that's the joy that characterizes that. So I just want to uplift you in that, because
that's cool.
That's sweet, man.
Yeah, well, it was an awesome weekend. This has been such a cool collection to walk through Jesus' parables. Like I said, next week we will be walking through another parable of Jesus and continuing to dive into that, which is super awesome. We do have some more questions for you here. We'll see how much time we have, but this is one that when this question was asked, I was like, I didn't even know that this was a debate. And you were like, oh yeah, I did. So you are a lot smarter than me. Part-time professor over there. All right. Lynn asks this. She said, I heard this recently concerning the virgin birth in Isaiah 14:7. Some argue that it doesn't actually refer to a virgin in Hebrew, but to a young woman, maybe married, that is actually talking about Isaiah's wife who is pregnant and gives birth to their kid, and therefore is not actually prophesying Jesus's birth. What are your thoughts?
Such a great question. And you know why I love, especially like this question and the first question, like these questions are coming because people are reading their Bibles and they want to know more, and they are interacting with commentaries. They're interacting with what the church has said through thousands of years and trying to better understand their Bibles, which is incredible, right? So about this, right? So I feel like first we need to tackle about how words work, right? So words, first of all, change over time. That's pretty clear. But they can also mean different things in different contexts, right? One word that I love, and I will use it in so many different contexts, is nice, right? So if I were to tell you, oh man, this guy I met, he was so nice. Can I be honest with you? If I were to say that, you have no idea what it means in that moment, right? Like I didn't give you enough context, because nice nowadays might mean the sarcastic, he was nice, like avoid him.
Right.
Or he was nice, like he was a good guy, he was kind, whatever, right? So words, depending on what context they're used in, will change. Their meanings change.
Yep.
So when we look at this verse in Isaiah, right, the Hebrew word used there is the word for young woman, right? It is the opposite of young man. It is young woman, right? So what in that context, we actually have a fulfillment there. There is, because in the context, there are some nations coming in to destroy Israel, to destroy God's chosen people during King Ahaz's reign. Okay. And so King Ahaz is confronted by Isaiah, and Isaiah is saying, God is going to protect you. Ask for a sign. Ask for a sign anywhere. In heaven, it doesn't matter. God's going to provide it for you. And King Ahaz, this is hilarious to me. He's like, no, I'm not going to put God to test. Like he just denies it. And Isaiah, speaking God's words, says, well, guess what? Even though you didn't ask for it, I'm going to provide a sign for you. And it is the sign that this woman will conceive and give birth to this child, right? So again, just like our virgin's bridesmaids discussion just a second ago, right? In that context, a young woman was somebody who hypothetically hadn't had intercourse yet, right? So she is a virgin, right? So this word has been used for virgin, has been used for young woman, right? But this is what's really cool. Because what happens in Isaiah, what happens in the Old Testament actually points forward to a future fulfillment. And so we get in Matthew this quotation, right? And this is what I think is really important about this. Because when the Greek is used in that context, right, all of a sudden it is put on their virgin. The Greek word used there in Matthew to that transliterated verse is virgin. There's no questioning. That is only used for a virgin. It's not this possible young woman, not possible. It's virgin. That's it. And that's what I think is so important. So when we read back into Isaiah, what we know has happened in Matthew, we can see not only is there a fulfillment there, right? Which is good. And Israel is saved in that moment. God provides a sign for them in that moment. But also it points forward to how God has reconciled humanity to himself through Jesus, right? So all of a sudden there's this thing called typology. You heard of typology? Mm-hmm. Okay, so typology, for maybe some of our listeners who don't know, typology is this idea that there are images in the Old Testament that point forward, right? So there are images. So the Exodus is a really good example, right? So the Exodus is this historical thing. God brings his chosen people, Israel, out of slavery in Egypt into a promised land. This is the Exodus. In the same way, Christ is leading a new exodus. He is taking humanity who has been in bondage to sin, taking them from that sin, releasing them from bondage, and bringing them into new creation, right? So that's how typology works.
That's a big piece of the collection that we walked through for a year, where we talked about center of all things. We saw things like Abraham sacrificing Isaac is like, man, this is such a picture of what God's going to do through Jesus. And like, there's just so many of those. So yes. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So we spent a year on that, right? And it felt like there was so much more we could have talked about. This instance, I think, is one of the more famous instances of typology. And at the end of the day, even if that word is young woman, it's in the context of the risen Savior, right? So we're going to read that back. We believe by faith that Mary was a virgin, conceived by the Holy Spirit, right? Like this, she conceives because of the Holy Spirit, right? That is a statement of faith. It's in our creeds. It's in what we profess in our faith. And so when we go back to Isaiah, sure, it could have meant young woman. And depending on the context you read it, it could be young woman. It doesn't say anything about her status, right? But when we compare them and put them up next to each other, man, we can still affirm full-heartedly that this is the same context. It's a virgin, right? So I think that's kind of my way I work through that potential problem, right? Because at the very end of the day, Matthew is using it as a virgin.
And I think that brings a ton of clarity to it, to be honest, because you could say, okay, this word in Hebrew, whatever. Yeah. Yes. However, the way that it's used later, they are also referring back to this word to, so I think that the clarity you would bring to it is a lot deeper than what I would say. I would just say like, man, look at Isaiah. How many of those prophecies came true? So if this one, we're just going to say this one's excluded, like by his stripes we are healed.
Totally.
Okay. We know what that's referring to. There's so many others where Isaiah is a book of prophecy. That's what he did. He was a prophet. And so many of those then also came true. Why in this one would we be like, well, I don't know. It's like, man, that's a conversation we've been having this whole time. Why would it change? So
no, 100%.
Yours is a lot more of
it's long-winded,
a better answer than mine, but
I don't know. Yours is
that's good. Mr. Beard, how are we doing on time? All right. We're 37 minutes. That's good. You got time for one more. Anonymous asked this question. We have a house guest who is of another religion. His beliefs are obviously so incredibly different from ours. Do we argue? And they put argue in quotes, which I think would just be a conversation. Would we argue nicely with our guest about their obvious scriptural ignorance, or just shut up and let them be?
Such a great question.
Yeah.
Such a great question. Because it's real life, right? You have somebody in your home who doesn't necessarily share your same beliefs, share your religion. So I always, in these situations, like it always depends on the context, right? But man, of course you can share with them what you believe, right? Yeah. Like the very fact that you took them in is demonstrating a level of hospitality that maybe isn't even normal, right? Like you're letting them stay with you, right? Like that's a huge, huge sign of grace. You're bringing somebody into your home that is not your family and that they can stay with you, right? So already through actions, you are preaching the good news, right? Like you are preaching, man, I am so secure in who I am. I'm so secure in who our family is and what we believe. You can come into our home. Yeah. And you're going to experience that no matter what. But like short answer, of course you can talk to them. I don't know what, argue is.
Yeah, I think that would just be disagreeing, right? And so when you see it differently, and that's where I would agree with you. Is like, man, have that conversation, because I think that anybody who takes any stance on anything, they should be able to answer why they took that stance, right? If you are wrong and say you don't like mint chip ice cream, like you'd be wrong in that.
Which I don't.
Which you're wrong in, but you should be able to give me a reason for it. And I should be able to give you a reason why I believe it's great, and so that's anything. So I would say, obviously, if they're of a different religion, if they have hung their hat on saying I'm a part of this religion, then they should have a reason to why they're a part of that religion, and it's cause for dialogue. So have a conversation and see. And you're obviously going to differ because it's a different thing. So give your reasons, let them give theirs. And, I think the heart posture to why you go into it is what matters the most, right? So are you going in to prove a point? Mm-hmm. Are you going in to start a fight?
Yeah.
Are you going in to get to the end of it? I think that many people have set out in a way to have a conversation with somebody of a different religion, and they've won the argument and lost the person. And that is not winning a battle and losing a war. It doesn't matter in the end.
Yeah.
And I have been guilty of this so many times where I have talked with people of different faiths, different religions. I've gone on trips specifically to engage in conversations with people of different faiths, different religions, for the purpose of winning an argument. And that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they leave and they go, you're a jerk, and I still believe what I believe.
Right.
So what your heart posture is going into it, I think, matters way more than even what is said when you're in it.
Yeah. And I think that heart posture, right? I think first things first, like obviously they're your house guests, but you should get to know them. Like, who are these people, right? Because the gospel comes to us incarnated in the Son of God, right? Like he comes, walks among us, right? I think that's really important. So as we go and present the good news in different spaces, we need to understand who we're presenting it to.
Yeah.
Right? Like I would present it differently to my junior hires than I do to my high schoolers. And never mind the fact of a college student. Right? Like, that's just age groups. I haven't even gotten into like demographic differences or anything like that.
Paul said, I became all things to all people.
Yeah. Right? Like, it seems really important to get to know who you're even sharing a house with, right? Like that, where are they at? And I think that shapes the way you approach that conversation, right? Because maybe they picked that religion or whatever because they come from a place of hurting and brokenness, right? And this religion has given them tangible things to hold on to. Guess what? I got something even more tangible for you. I got something that's even more powerful, that's going to sustain you to the end, right? Like it changes the way you would approach that conversation. So
yeah, I agree. And I would say one more thing on that. When it comes to, I think Christians have a tendency to run away from tough conversations like that. And tough things help us grow.
Yeah.
That's what weightlifting is you are struggling against something. You're coming up against adversity, really.
Yeah. And
it makes your muscles grow.
Yeah.
Obviously don't lift. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to religion, a lot of times we run away from those tough conversations when actually that's how you're going to grow. I will say, when I went on those missions trips, my heart posture might not have been in the right way. I wanted to answer, I just wanted to give the right answer and wanted to win an argument.
Yeah.
However, I also did grow in my faith because I grew in what I knew. My heart needed to change.
Yeah.
But my understanding of what I believed and why I believed it did grow. So I think engaging in those conversations with somebody of a different religion in a respectful way, where you can respect them and they can respect you, and it doesn't turn into a fight and your heart is in the right place, you're going to grow in your faith. 100%. Knowing why you believe, what you believe, is so important. In fact, that's in the Bible. Be able to give a reason for the hope that you have. That is a defense of the faith. That is a understanding of why you believe what you believe. So, I would say, for Anonymous who asked this question, definitely engage in those conversations, but in a respectful, meaningful way. You don't want to lose a relationship there at all. Yeah. So, great. Noah, this has been awesome. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having
today and sharing your wisdom with us. We will get to have another conversation with you in a couple weeks as well. Hopefully,
stoked for that.
So just so anyone listening knows, go ahead and submit your theological questions for Noah right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't send anything in, like maybe I'll just present a paper for you that I have to read, then that'll make you want to send in questions.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Upon the threat of him reading an academic paper for you, go ahead and send in questions. But for those of you who've made it this far, you've made it to the end of the podcast club. And there it goes. We are so glad that you made it here. And we still don't have a prize or a giveaway or anything like that. If John were here, he would say, we got to give him this. We got to do a giveaway. We got merch, Maybe we should have merch when he comes back. How cool would that be?
Surprise him.
Yeah, like he missed out on all of it, and he can order it and limited supply. So supply and demand will jack up the price, and he'll have to buy it. All right, we're getting out of control here, but thank you guys so much for viewing and listening and making it this far. It's because of you guys that we are able to even have this show. Please like, share, comment, do what you need to do to share this content with people you know. And that might be leaving us a 5-star review. Please do that. We'd love to read that on the show. Also, any questions that you have, please submit them. I told you before, our question reservoir is running low. So we need you guys to submit those. This show is only as good as the questions you ask. But thank you guys so much. Final thought for today is this. There are so many things in scripture that we can read and we can look at and we can debate and we can ask questions, and those are all amazing. But man, we cannot miss the thing that matters most. Nephilim and words in Hebrew and all the random stuff that we decide to talk about, which is our great conversations, cannot be a distraction for Jesus himself, who came and died and lived and was here for you and rose again so that we could have new life in Jesus. Walk in that new life and in that freedom this week. Love you guys. See you next week.